Rebuilding peace in South Sudan, a plan that was supposed to end the civil war now in doubt following the controversial replacement of Vice President Riek Machar. So how does this complicate the already tense situation in the country? And is an international intervention the answer? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Dareen Abughaida. The world's youngest country is on the brink of more political turmoil, threatening a peace process that took months to come. A faction of South Sudan's opposition says it's replaced its leader and the country's vice president, Riek Machar. So mining minister Taban Dengai is now the acting vice president. Guy was fired by Machar on Friday, who accused him of defecting to his longtime rival, President Salva Kiir's party. But in a surprise turn of events, Machar's own party members backed Guy and appointed him as the interim vice president. Riek Machar left the capital last week and his location is unknown. He insists on returning only if a neutral force backed by the African Union is deployed. Violence between rival factions has killed more than 300 people. It's displaced thousands. So Taban Dengai insists that his appointment is legal.
All the generals of the SPLM in opposition, all the citizens, the population, they support peace, and they want to continue with the implementation of the peace agreement. They also know me, that I can deliver. And as I'm saying, I'm just only feeling a vacuum. If the man come back, Riek Machar come back tomorrow, I will gladly step aside if that can bring peace to South Sudan.
Well, the world's youngest nation has been engulfed in violence since its birth. In 2011, the country gained its independence after decades of war with Sudan. At least 1.5 million people were killed and 4 million displaced in Africa's longest-running civil war. 2 years later, the country was mired in a civil war after its president, Salva Kiir, accused his vice president, Riek Machar, of planning a failed coup. More than 10,000 people were killed and more than 2 million people were displaced. And finally, last year, President Kiir and rebel leader Machar signed a long-awaited peace deal in the capital, Juba, under the threat of UN sanctions. In April this year, Machar returned to South Sudan to resume his old job as vice president in Kiir's new unity government. But peace was short-lived. Earlier this month, violence broke out again. Two sides took up arms, leaving more than 300 people dead and forcing Riek Machar to flee Juba once again. Let's bring in our guests for this panel. Joining us from Juba is Ateny. He's the spokesman for President Salva Kiir. From Nairobi, we have Adwok Nyaba, who is South Sudan's Minister of Higher Education, and he speaks on behalf of Riek Machar. From Cambridge in the UK, we're joined by Biar Ajak, who founded the Centre for Strategic Analyses and Research and was a former advisor to the government. Adwok Nyaba, if I can ask you, is the appointment of Taban Dengai as an interim vice president legal?
Yes, it's illegal. In fact, it is a coup, and a coup within the SPLA-IO. This is because what it has shown now is that what happened yesterday is a revelation that the mole that has been inside the SPLA-IO has come out clearly. This is what the role Taban has been playing since December 2015. He has been, in fact, has betrayed the SPLM in all that he has been doing since that time.
Why is this illegal? Why is this a coup when the vice president, Riek Machar, has missed the deadline to return to Juba? His whereabouts are unknown, and this appointment of the new vice president is reportedly temporary until Machar returns.
Dr. Riek did not he got out of Juba not by his own accord. He was forced out of Juba. There was a military action against him by Salva Kiir. And it has become clear that Taban was part of this conspiracy. So his appointment now by just 5 members of the political bureau, comprising 23 members, shows that this is, the coup has been hatched. And this is what has been going on in the circles of the party of Salva Kiir and the Young Council of Elders.
What can you tell us about when Riek Machar will return to Juba then, and what can you tell us about his whereabouts?
Well, there is no vacuum. Riek was forced out, and he can only come back to Juba on the deployment of the third-party intervention force. This is what we have said, and it's clear. Now, what Taban is doing is so desperate. It's a desperate attempt to destroy the peace agreement, and this plays into the hands of Salva Kiir and the Young Council of Elders.
Ateny in Juba, a spokesman for Machar has said that they have evidence that Deng was secretly working with Kiir for many months. What can you tell us about that? What kind of relationship do the two men have, and what kind of knowledge did Kiir have of this new appointment?
That is not true, although this is purely a business of the SPLM-SPLA-IO. It has nothing to do with the government of South Sudan, and particularly has nothing to do with President Salva Kiir. In the interest of peace agreement, I would say if the SPLM-IO has chosen Taban Dengai, then why would Dr. Peter Adwok call it unconstitutional or call it illegal, when in actual fact the SPLM-IO should not be a business of one person called Riek Machar? Though I don't speak for them, but for the interest of peace, whoever has now remained, because the office of the first vice president has remained vacant for more than 2 weeks. And I do, I disagree with Professor Adwok that Dr. Riek Machar was forced out of Juba. He was not forced out of Juba. He forced himself out of Juba because he thinks, somebody else would actually be doing a job for him instead of him sitting with President Salva Kiir to implement peace agreement. If
so
President
do you
Salva
truly
Kiir
believe that Deng is the man then to move the peace process along with Salva Kiir?
He would have done away. Yeah, actually they went along. That's why President Salva Kiir spared his life during that fateful night of Friday, the 8th. President Salva Kiir allowed him to go. And that indicates that President Salva Kiir was willing to work with Dr. Machar. But if Dr. Machar has chosen to leave because simply he was looking for the third-party force, he did not know that, last time it was him who insisted on 2 armies. Then when he was allowed to have an army, his army came and attacked, the forces of government. So when his forces were actually defeated, he's now looking for the third-party force to come to Juba. What he is looking for, he wants to have upper hand and take over power in Juba by force. Otherwise, Dr. Adwok would have agreed with me that President Salva Kiir is not the one who has actually instigated the fighting on the Friday, the 8th.
Okay, Peter,
so Biar Ajak
left in
Juba
Cambridge,
alone, and therefore it is constitutional for the
for
SPLM-IO to replace him.
Peter, in Cambridge, what does this appointment mean for Salva Kiir? Is it a political victory for Kiir? And what does this mean for the peace process?
Well, I don't know exactly to what role the President Salva Kiir has played in this dynamic. Of course, with this crisis in South Sudan, there have been a lot of rumors moving around about shifting allegiances. And by the way, it's always important to keep this in historical perspective, that there's a large history here in South Sudan involving Machar and Taban Deng. This is not the first time that they left together and then they returned separately. And these alliances have always changed. And this has been the case in South Sudan with different actors defecting and then defecting from one side to another. So I don't know exactly what extent that the president has played in this role. But what is clear is that the president gave Riek Machar a timeline of 48 hours to report to Juba. And it seems that timeline has now elapsed. But the issue here is to think of a peace agreement broadly beyond any individual, but also broadly in looking at some of the key tenets of the agreement, especially the security arrangement. The latest crisis started with security arrangement falling apart. As you all remember, the conflict started while the president and the first vice president were meeting, and this conflict then spread out to the extent that the vice president and his forces were flushed out of Juba. And what has followed since then has been a recommendation from the IGAD and the African Union that you need some sort of force that will provide security in Juba and in other parts that are sensitive so that the agreement can resume and be implemented. But the question is, what is the timeline realistically? When can we expect these forces to arrive in Juba? And then in the meantime, what is going to happen with the peace agreement? But one thing for clear is that there is a power struggle within the SPLM-IO. This is clearly the case. There is a power struggle now between Riek Machar on one hand and his supporters, and Taban Dengai on the other hand and their supporters. And this power struggle is quite frankly dangerous to the peace agreement.
On the point of the regional forces, Ateny in Juba, President Salva Kiir, we understand, has said that he would not allow additional international forces into the country. Why is that?
Well, the president has made it categorically clear that the forces of United Nations that are in South Sudan are more than 12,000. But they could not do anything at the time when Dr. Machar forces, attacked our forces. In order for us to be talking of increasing international forces in Juba, when in actual fact, the people of South Sudan are capable of running their own country, in the interest of the peace agreement, instead of increasing international peacekeepers in South Sudan or regional force, President Salva Kiir and the people of South Sudan don't want more forces.
How are the people
Machar
of South Sudan capable of running their own country? When residents of South Sudan, in fact, say they are frustrated with the government, and they say that your government has failed to ensure peace and stability.
Our people are made to feel frustrated. Are made by those who wanted to help us when in actual fact they are not helping us. Our people are actually, advised to leave us. Our people are actually given wrong information in order to leave South Sudan, when in actual fact there's no any better place for them anywhere. People of South Sudan are here better in South Sudan than in any other country in the world. So the people of South Sudan are also victim of the miscalculated, scenario whereby the IGAD came with a peace agreement that says there has to be two armies. And when we argued this, we were forced to sign a peace agreement which includes the two armies. And the two armies became fatal. Now they are trying to look for another way out by saying that it is the regional force or the third-party force that would actually guarantee.
Well, there is another idea. Peter Adwok Nyaba from Nairobi.
Okay. They are in Central African Republic. They are in Somalia, but they have not brought peace to those places.
All right. Let me put forward another idea. Peter Adwok Nyaba. Well, let me ask you about this idea that's being floated around. It was put forward by the former U.S. Special Envoy to Sudan and South Sudan, and they are saying that South Sudan needs to be put on life support by establishing an executive mandate for the UN and the EU to essentially administer the country until institutions themselves in South Sudan are able to take over. What's your reaction to that?
The peace agreement was supposed to help the state and to really reconstitute the state in South Sudan. Because today, as we speak, after the withdrawal of Riek Machar and his forces from Juba, we don't have a national army in Juba. We don't have national security apparatus in Juba. The forces in Juba are all tribal, directed by the Jiang Council of Elders. It's not a national army. And that's why we insist that in order for us to implement the peace agreement, there should be a third force. Because Juba was supposed to be demilitarized. The Salva Kiir and his people refused to demilitarize Juba. They were pretending and showing.
Okay, so just for clarity, when you speak about the third force, what are you referring to? Are you referring to a regional force, or are you referring to this idea that I've just asked you about establishing an executive mandate for the UN and the AU to administer South Sudan?
No, but we are talking of implementation of the peace agreement. Unless we say that the peace agreement has collapsed, and in this sense, we can talk of UN stewardship or UN mandate in South Sudan.
Well, do you still have hope that the peace agreement can be implemented under the current circumstances?
We believe that it can be implemented if Juba and other major towns in South Sudan are demilitarized. Because, as I said, there is no national army in South Sudan. As of the December 2013, what has remained are all tribal armies carrying arms, and you need to demilitarize them to make it peaceful. And that's why in Juba, people, we had only 1,300 troops. It's not that force that dispersed the people that went to kill people in the UN protection of civilian camps. It was not the IO forces that shot and killed the Chinese peacekeepers in Juba. So this is why we are saying that we have a tribal army, militia, who do not even answer to any central command. That's why they need to be demilitarized and disarmed, such that Juba is peaceful. You can have the transitional government of national unity operating effectively in order to make the reforms.
All right,
Peter
Biar Ajak,
in order to bring the state back on its leg.
Peter Biar Ajak, how likely is all of this to happen, that the country is demilitarized, that the tribal militias are demilitarized? And also, let me get your take on this idea that's being floated around in the international community now about a possible international intervention that I was asking my guest from Nairobi about.
Well, I understand where the recommendation is coming from. This is coming from very respectable people like Princeton Lyman and Kate Almquist-Knopp. And the two individuals have spent a lot of time working on South Sudan. Princeton Lyman was the special envoy to Sudan and South Sudan and was heavily involved in the implementation of a peace agreement and the referendum that led to the independence of South Sudan. So I understand the frustration that has been coming from, because indeed, to be fair, South Sudan government has struggled enormously to exert its sovereignty internally in the country. Every day you read about innocent people that are being killed by unknown gunmen. As we speak, the country is on the brink of economic collapse. There is humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in many parts of the country. So these are true concerns. However, what is being proposed, UN-AU administration, is akin to trusteeship. And the United Nations Charter makes it quite clear that trusteeship is something that cannot be imposed on an independent state. And South Sudan is a fellow member of the United Nations, and therefore there's no legal precedence anywhere in the world for an independent state who is a member of the United Nations to be put under trusteeship. So that is, first of all, quite problematic. Second is this issue of demilitarization of towns, and especially Juba. This was proposed during the negotiations, and the two parties, is not just only the government that rejected this, but also the IO also rejected this idea. And even the idea of bringing in a third force that could impose peace and ensure security in the country was also proposed, and it was rejected. The likelihood of this happening is quite problematic because, as Ateny said, and I think even Adwok Nyaba himself would agree, this current security arrangement of two armies in the country is extremely problematic. We have seen that this has been a total disaster, and it would never work. It would actually make it impossible for the security sector transformation to take place in the country, because the two institutions of the armies will be attached to a particular individual. The SPLA will be seen as loyal to Salva Kiir, and then the other SPLA-IO will be seen as loyal to Riek Machar or Taban Dengai, regardless of who is in charge of the IO.
Okay.
This is quite problematic because the security institutions of the country ought to be loyal to the country. And because of this peace agreement, which separate these armies and legitimize them in the country, it's difficult then to build coherent national armed forces that are then loyal to the republic.
All right. So well, the latest escalation in violence in South Sudan has in fact led to widespread displacement. As we've been hearing, more than 26,000 people have crossed south into Uganda since fighting broke out earlier this month in around the capital, Juba. More than 90% of those people are women and children. On Friday, a record number of 8,000 people braved heavy rain and waded through muddy roads into Uganda. The UN saying this is the largest influx of people on a single day this year. And an official at the UN camp in Juba says 470 women are internally displaced camps, and they've been raped since fighting began in July. More than 300 people have died in fighting between rival groups, and attacks on aid workers have also increased significantly in the past few months, with reports of rape as well as robberies. Peter Adwok Nyaba in Nairobi. So you see the effect that this the civil war initially had, and then this infighting is having on your people in South Sudan. Just how much is Riek Machar willing to compromise to put the country on the path of peace? If Taban Dengai turns out to be a better acting vice president, a better vice president rather, who will move the country towards peace, is Riek Machar willing to step aside and step down?
Well, it's not an issue of compromise. First, who is controlling the IO? It is Riek Machar. Taban has no forces. He had only 5 people who voted him to act in the place of Riek Machar. Is that going to bring peace? Even if Salva Kiir appoints him tomorrow as the first vice president.
Okay, what is going to bring peace?
To South Sudan? I don't think
If you can give me a clear and concrete answer, what will bring peace?
What we are saying, and I agree with Peter, that the very concept of 2 armies is staying together. Two armies that have never been integrated. It's a real disaster, and the recent events have proved that. What we are saying is that you bring in a third force with a mandate of protecting the civil society. Because you've just said that the people are running away. Are they running away from who? You should ask that question. They are running away from the same army, this tribal militia. Because most of these people who are running to Uganda are Equatorians. Who are being displaced from their house, whose lands are being taken over by these tribal militias.
Okay, Ateny, Ateny, and Juba.
An external force, a regional force, and has that been agreed by the regional body, the IGAD, the AU has agreed, and they have asked the United Nations Security Council to endorse that. What is the problem now?
Ateny, can you answer that? What is the problem? Is this what is going to bring peace to South Sudan? And what is President Salva Kiir willing to do? How much is he willing to compromise?
First of all, it is unfortunate. First of all, it is unfortunate that our people are made to leave the country because of a miscalculated idea of having 2 armies, which actually caused the fight in Juba. And as a result, people started running away for safety. But at the same time, when you look at the Minister of National Unity, the way he's talking, Professor Dr. Adwok Nyaba, as if, he doesn't like anything tribal, when in actual fact, he accepted to be nominated to be a minister, in the government of national unity under the ticket of an organization that is 90 or 99% one ethnic group.
For the interest of time, I ask you to answer my question in a minute or less about what will bring peace to the country and not make this personal.
Of course, I'm saying the army, Professor Adwok, the army is calling a tribal army, is the same army that liberated this country. They were not told that you were actually, tribal when they were liberating this country, and Dr. Adwok knows this, correctly. The problem is because the ministers, even like Adwok, are looking for a third-party force in order for South Sudan to be taken into trusteeship in order for them to be able to work, because they know that people of South Sudan will not vote them in later on if they are looking for a position. And they wanted to live there in a position until they die. If they really know that people of South Sudan can vote for them, they cannot advocate for third force or to advocate for a third-party force, which will culminate into an anarchy in South Sudan, because all the third-party force will come as an invaders, and we will not allow them to come. We will not allow invasion to come to South Sudan.
Okay.
People of South Sudan has the capacity to address their own issues, and Dr. Adwok Nyaba knows this.
On that note, we'll leave it there. Thanks to all my guests, Ateny Ateny, Peter Adwok Nyaba, and Peter Biar Ajak. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From myself and the whole team here in Doha, bye-bye for now.